All right. So this looks like the camera is not going to work today. I must be having a bad camera day. I'm not sure where the settings are for that, where I can check that out. So I'm just going to go ahead and speak to you. This is a an opportunity for me to introduce a couple of things. First of all, I have put on my website, which is now soundmountainhealing.com. Those other web addresses should all take you to that same site that we've upgraded. If for some reason it doesn't, just go to soundmountainhealing.com. All of that is spelled exactly like it sounds. So that'll get you there. So first order of business, I have put on my channel here on YouTube, as well as on my website now, the entire herbal first aid coursework. And this is the same coursework that I've been using and teaching for, um, gosh, since 2007. So that's about 13 years. And I've put that all together. The demonstrations are on YouTube. The audio files are now podcasts on the ER page. The ER stands for Enlightened Revolution. And on the ER page of my website, soundmountainhealing.com, you can find a lot of podcasts, some of them addressing the issues going on in our nation right now. And but right at the top, you'll find a link you can click on, and you can listen to that entire series. I think it's 13 or 14 different audio recordings that will take you through everything that I've talked about herbal first aid, things you can do safely and effectively at home, and things that don't take a huge amount of education. There are a few things on there where I tell you you need some experience before you try this. You need to know what to look for things that are not going well, so that you know when it's time to make a change, and in some cases seek additional help. Many of those things, though, they're not serious to start with. They're just problems we suffer with at home that you can take care of much better, much faster, with no pain or a lot less discomfort by learning how to do it naturally. So all of that information is there. And then finally, on my blog post on soundmountainhealing.com, you can find the handout that goes with the coursework that has a list of herbs and remedies that I use as part of herbal medicine, and which will sort of give you a quick reference guide. You should be able to just copy, I think, that page, and or maybe just print the whole thing and have it on hand to look at if you're going to be doing herbal first aid, if you're going to be doing herbal home healthcare, herbal medicine. You're going to want that as a starter, and it's a great place to start. It's not going to help you with chronic disease, probably. There are a few things there that might, but mostly it's going to help you with little issues that just come up every day. And lots of information there. I hope you'll go and check it out. I hope you'll use that information. It's all free to you. The website makes its money by having a lot of herbal and nutritional products for sale. And if you do go there and you have any issues with ordering, please take just a moment and send me a note saying, hey, we're having this problem. Tell me what error message, if any, came up. Because we've had intermittent issues. We've got lots of people who order all the time and don't have any problems with the website, but we've had some intermittent issues with people trying to place an order and it just not seeming to go through. And we're trying to get to the bottom of those. I've got my tech guys working on the problem, and so far haven't been able to find exactly what's wrong there. So hopefully that will be solved uh, soon. But in the interim, if you do place an order, and I hope you will, because that helps pay for my doing this, um, then you can let me know if that's going well. All right, thank you for that. Now, so that's item number one. Item number two, I want to talk just a little bit about what I think is an important component of our whole health. And I'm going to do a few recordings on this. Some of them may be a little controversial or challenge your personal beliefs a little bit. I hope that if ever I say anything to you that challenges your personal beliefs, number one, you'll ask yourself, is there room for me to upgrade? And if there is, I invite you to upgrade your beliefs. Number two, if you feel like there's not room for you to upgrade and you just disagree with me, just discard that part and let it be. Allow us to talk about things that are useful to you. Find some good messages from what I have to say besides. So, but today I don't think this will be too controversial. We're going to just introduce the idea, though, of talking about our spiritual health. And so when we talk about holistic healing, we're talking about two perspectives on that. The first perspective is a mile wide, right? And the second perspective is a mile deep. And what I mean by that is the first perspective is every part of our life. So you want to have health and balance and wisdom and good choices, healthy choices, things that help you deal with stressors, including stressors in our modern world, as well as things that just help optimize your health. You want those strewn throughout every part of your life, whether you're going to work, whether you're driving a car, whether you're going to visit friends, whether you're going out to eat, whether you're going to make food at home, whether you're going to reorganize your living room, whether you're going to remodel your house, whether you're going to um, keep or throw away stuff in your life, whether you're going to sort of upgrade the quality of your speech and what you say and what you think about with other people, whether you're going to um, go to church, whether you're going to um, go buy something to bring into your life. All of those things need a cast upon them of health, right? They need this this light shed upon them that brings health and balance and wisdom into them. Just doing anything compulsively or impulsively without really pondering on its value may not be terribly wise, although there's room and importance in our lives for a certain amount of impulsiveness. A person who's stuck is no healthier than a person who can't anchor themselves anywhere. They're both a disaster area to be around, and in their own lives, they're very unhealthy and unwise. So we don't want to be either of those things. We want to have a certain amount of impulsiveness, but we want guidelines, channels, things we follow that keep us from doing destructive things to ourselves and others. So I'm certainly hoping today that I will give you some inspiration toward keeping every part of your life healthy. The other way we look at holistic health, I said, is a mile deep. And by that, I mean not so much a mile. Actually, it's a definable number of things. But we want our surroundings healthy, our physical body healthy, our family healthy, our social life healthy, our um, our emotional health, emotional life healthy. We want our intellectual life healthy. We want our energetic life healthy. And we want our spiritual life healthy. And so those represent these components of our wholeness. Our individual wholeness depends on on our relationship to others. Only a fool would imagine that that it's all about us. There's no such thing. And one of the challenges with our current issues in this nation and around the world is that it seems like everyone has forgotten that. Everyone has forgotten that a key component of our wholeness, of our whole health, involves our relationship to others. And I don't know what happened there, but it's gone completely crazy as far as I can tell. Uh, so another thing is, um, our emotional health, our family health, our the structure of our home, our personal space, our intellectual health. So each of these I've talked about in other times and in other places, and they're all very, very important. And I hope that uh, if you want to live a whole life, you will spend a little bit of time assessing and planning and making goals for each part of your life so that you can start to progress a little bit forward. Make a conscious, deliberate, determined effort. Make a choice, a commitment to step forward, to step up, to improve the quality of each of those areas. And just be very careful about anything you've just let slide into your life, or that you compulsively do, or anything you say or think that doesn't bring you into a state of wholeness and correctness. Um, we live in a world where this strange thing has happened, where we've sort of started removing the whole idea of correctness from our world. What a nutty thing to do. um, of course there's correctness, right? And um, and yet we've started to abolish that, and seems like the only thing that is accepted as correct is when somebody is asserting their right to do something that is incorrect. uh, it's just silly. If you go home and eat horrible food, and you do it day after day, that it's going to destroy your body. Everybody knows that, right? So that's just that's just a sample that there are things that are correct and things that are incorrect. And that's true in every part of our holistic being. So if you're being dishonest with yourself, if you're putting agendas above your morals and values, if you've decided morals and values are inconvenient, you're just going to abandon them. Those are things that are all incorrect. They're incorrect. So, um, you know, let's start being part of the solution. We don't become part of the solution by joining up with a herd stampeding toward a cliff. We become part of the solution by making the choice, difficult or not, to align ourselves with the right kinds of things. And this is just as valid in diet as it is in how we treat each other, as it is in how we respect each other, as it is in honoring nature, as it is in being honest when we go to work and working hard, and also keeping that in balance. um, it's just as important in every part of our life. It's just as important in the care of our physical bodies as it is in politics or sociality, as it is in our emotional health, mental health, and spiritual health. Now, I just want to introduce, and I'm going to try to do it briefly, uh, the idea of spiritual health. That's what I really want to talk about. So, this is a component of wholeness. And we're going to talk about my personal ideas about spiritual health, because I believe that um, that many people just sort of are wandering around, and they need an opportunity, at least, to look at those values and go, I can see the truth in them. I'm going to move there. Um, but I'm not going to do that today. Today I'm going to try to introduce more generically the idea of spiritual health and what that means. Once again, modern society has been taking steps into this weird. Well, uh, let me introduce this idea differently. When I was in chiropractic school, I took an economics class, and the economics professor was this interesting fellow from India, and very intelligent and thick Indian accent. I really liked him though, and I listened to everything he had to say. And between the book that we used and his lectures, he convinced me that the economy, if you just leave it alone, will self regulate and become stable in and of itself. And by leave it alone, that means you don't, big business can't swoop in, buy up an idea that's going to make everybody free, but is not going to make money, and hide it on a shelf. That's interfering with natural economy. So that would be a dishonest thing and an unethical thing based on economy for that business to do. It's going to have an ultimate bad effect on everybody. Uh, Another example, one we're much more familiar with. Most of the time, when big businesses do that, we never know about it, right? It gets hidden, swept under the rug. They don't want anybody to know that there's an idea out there that's going to make you free, that's not going to make anybody any money, that's going to just give you liberty and security in your life, right? That's going to make you free from dependence on energy that someone can charge you for, make it free to communicate, free to for transportation, right? No, businesses do not want that. So that stuff gets gobbled up and scooped out of the way, and you never hear about it. And they pretend like it never happened. They just want you to feel like, well, we're doing the best things right now. All this dependence on central resources because people can have money and power based on that, right? So, but another example we're much more familiar with, I started to say, is where the government swoops in and throws a bunch of money at a problem in our economy. It causes an instability in the economy, right? And so as soon as that happens, well, it may be useful, may be important. I mean, I've had checks from the government that saved me personally, I suppose, and I can appreciate the value to an individual. But the moment you do it, you create an unstable economy. You create an economy where some things appreciate inappropriately. Things are no longer in proper relationship to each other. And it creates a weakened portion of the population and a portion of the population that has too much power. Now, interestingly enough, that isn't really good for either of those. Both of those portions of the population will have instability in their lives and in their economy because of that change. So, oddly enough, even the people who appear to be winning don't actually win. They end up with patterns in their lives that are self-destructive and world destructive. And we never really want to do that. And the quicker we withdraw that government interference, the faster the economy will return to a natural, stable, secure area that actually allows people to move within it based on their individual merit and creativity and work ethic and education and things like that. So there may be ways to intervene in economies that are healthy without throwing a bunch of money into the situation. I'm definitely not against the idea of doing so, but we must be very careful to not just throw money into the situation. We want everything to go back to a normal, balanced economy in appropriate relationships, and that simply doesn't happen when with big government bailouts. So, all right. So, as that is our foundation, we can now talk about spiritual uh, health, right? The spiritual part of wholeness. Because what I want to introduce to you is the idea that when we introduce this outside influence, it tends to destabilize whatever part of life we're talking about. So the same thing happens with the physical body. If you introduce whole foods to the body can self balance. But when you isolate a vitamin or a drug or an amino acid or a mineral, and you're just going to give loads of just that one to the person, lots of it, immediately the person gets thrown out of balance. Now, you may help them, but long term, you create an imbalance that's now that's going to wobble for a while before it stabilizes back to a state of homeostasis, a state of actual balance. And if you keep every time it wobbles, if you keep introducing a new drug or a new supplement or a new, and again, supplements can be fine if they're whole food, but when you introduce the chemical isolate, you're manipulating the system. You get this person who can't self-regulate. And this, we of course do not want. We want our health to be self-regulating. Spiritual health is much like that. Um, we have to be careful when we're talking about spiritual health that we do not introduce an idea as a spiritual health ideal that just pushes everybody out of their natural state. Now, this, of course, there are going to be lots of new ideas coming down the line. The problem isn't when an individual introduces a new idea. When I introduce a new idea to you, that wobbles you a little, but ultimately, that's going to make you more stable. It's like food. If you eat food, your system is thrown off while you digest the food. And then it wobbles a little, comes back to center, if you allow it to, if you give it a break from food. Something that there are some things where I'm a little bit of a hypocrite. That doesn't mean I don't know the truth. It just means I'm a little bit of a hypocrite, and this is one of them. I have a tendency to eat to keep myself going. It's out of balance. It's inappropriate. Doesn't allow me to get back in balance. Right? To get back in balance, you need breaks from food, and I take those, but not nearly as often as I should. And so that's something, though, that it's a true principle, even though I'm not doing it perfectly, right? So that's fine, but it doesn't really hurt me to introduce that. So for you to introduce a new idea to me that wobbles me a little doesn't hurt me. Where it becomes a problem is where the system just decides, we're going to make a fundamental change. We're not going to do it based on how people are thinking and believing. We're not going to allow it to progress organically, naturally, like the economy question. But we're going to introduce it and force everything to change. And this happened in our educational system on spiritual values. It was a forced change. It was orchestrated. Anybody who actually follows it knows it was orchestrated from on high. And I don't mean God. I mean government. I mean corrupt people who just wanted to shift things for their own interests, right? And so it began to change the educational system, not in an organic way. It didn't happen because we were growing and learning and evolving. It was happening because we wanted to manipulate the system, like the drug, like the government payoff. It's the same kind of thing. And vitamin. I say drugs. I don't want to just be pointing at medical doctors. The idea of introducing chemically isolated vitamins to people, there may be a place for it short term, just like there may be a place for drugs short term. But ultimately, the goal has to be to get those out of the picture so that the person can go back to a natural balance. This has been done spiritually in our education system. And those who grew up without thinking about such things may believe that this all just happened naturally and that's just where we are now because we're smarter. But that isn't what happened at all. We didn't get smarter. We didn't get better. We just got manipulated. We just got jacked around, right, by this change that happened to us. Well, that has created this instability spiritually. And there's this modern movement where spirituality is viewed basically as anything that is ethereal, right? Anything that doesn't actually have substance must be spiritual. And even things that have substance, like the idea, I actually heard someone say, if you walk around unclothed, that's good for you spiritually, right? I don't even know where to start with that, right? First of all, it has nothing to do with our spirituality, right? It might be healthy for our bodies to let air circulate around them, right? It might have some genuine benefits. I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm just saying it has nothing to do with spirituality. It has to do with health and energy flow of the earth and sort of maybe self-awareness. That's possible. um, and indeed, it doesn't just have nothing to do with spirituality. There may be some points of spirituality that suggest it's inappropriate. So let's talk about that for a second. The idea of spirituality for humans is the concept of moving toward an ideal holistically. It's the concept of moving toward an ideal that exists in an eternal space, and our everything we see around us, our solar system, our galaxy, none of those exist in eternal space. That's all changing, shifting, and it's going to die someday. Absolutely. I don't know any scientist who doesn't think that's going to all die someday, right? But the idea spiritually for humans is this notion of an eternal space in which there is an eternal existence, and we are moving holistically toward that ideal. That's what defines us spiritually, right? Um, Anything else, well, you have to misuse the word. Now therein lies some of the problem, and I've talked about this before, that the idea from Eastern thought of the spirit, and also in a lot of Aboriginal cultures, the word that they used for a certain thing got translated into English as spirit or spiritual. But it wasn't spirit or spiritual at all. It was actually uh, just energetic, right? Or actually, that's not usually what gets translated. The thing that gets translated as spirit is the vim and delight for life. Okay, that drive that makes us just delighted to be alive and living and enjoying the world. Now, if you use that as your definition of spirit, then we have a whole different discussion, right? We have a discussion that doesn't have anything to do with eternal anything, right? It just has to do with our a certain component of our health that allows us to go out and just find joy in everything around us, to just find joy in making our environment clean and healthy and clutter free, and in good positive associations with others, and enjoying the world and creations and inventions and all of these. If that is your definition, now we could say that walking around your house unclothed might have a spiritual value, right? Because your it's your ability to enjoy the vitality of life. That could be true. It's not necessarily true, of course, but it could be, right? Just like swimming in the ocean, now we can call that a spiritual experience, right? If we use that definition base, right? Um, uh, Looking at the moon, meditation, these can all be now spiritual experiences. Now, meditation's interesting because it could fit in either explanation for spirit. So I would like to suggest that in English, at least, the use of the word spirit is confusing because we have these two distinct definitions. So for my part, when I talk about spiritual health, I am not talking about our vim for life. I'm not talking about Shen, right, from Chinese medicine. I'm not talking about the energy that connects us with everything, that makes us just feel good to be alive with everything else, right? That would be that Eastern notion of spirit. And Aboriginal culture notion of spirit. I'm talking about our spiritual health in terms of this eternal concept, this notion of the eternal substance and stuff within us, headed toward an ideal goal. And that becomes a different notion of spirituality. And it requires us to live moral lives, right? Because if you don't, then you stop heading toward that ideal goal. You're still eternal. You can't do anything about that. It's who and what you are. But now you start heading toward a different goal. And of course, whatever goal you head toward, that's the goal you'll ultimately achieve. Now, this can branch out into discussions of religion. Now, the idea of religion is, I hear people saying all the time, it's almost become a ubiquitous mantra now. Um, well, um, religion's man-made, so I'm not religious. But that's shallow and cowardly and not based on any degree of understanding or wisdom or thought, as far as I can tell, right? Certainly not very perceptive thought, right? Religion is the structure. Remember, I said the goal of spirituality, in the sense I'm talking about, is to take this eternal component of ourselves and move that holistically, our whole life, toward an ideal eternal icon, right? So that we can become as good as we possibly can, as to have as much as we possibly can have, right? So the moment we eliminate some part of our holistic being and say, oh, well, that's my job, right? I don't want that confused with my spiritual life, right? Now you're not it. You can't do that. It's connected to your spiritual life, right? The spiritual part of you is that movement toward that ideal, and it involves your social life, it involves your job, it involves your family, it involves your health, it involves your personal choices, it involves honesty, it involves integrity and morals. It involves all of that. It's all a movement toward this iconic goal, eternal goal, right? Church, the idea of a church is not man-made. That's an irrelevant discussion. It's the wrong discussion, right? To even bring that up shows you don't understand it at all. Church has nothing to do with man-made or God-made. It is a structure wherein we can work together socially, because that is a key component of our wholeness, to move toward that ideal. And in doing so, we help each other. Now, are there going to be people in church who are the opposite of help? I suppose, right? And you can reason about their value or lack thereof all you want, but of course they're going to be there, right? But how else would you move socially toward that ideal if you don't have a social structure for that? So you can't separate the notion of spirituality from church. That's so strange. That's like separating, your liver out and say, well, that has nothing to do with my health, right? Everything else has to do with my health, but not my liver. I just decided that, right? Such a weird thing to decide. It doesn't make any sense at all, right? Are there flaws in church? Well, there's flaws in people. Are there people who are using church inappropriately and using it for power and inappropriate things and unjust things? Of course there are. It's their people, right? There are going to be people who their particular goal is something less than the ideal, and they're going to be creating problems wherever they go, right? And we deal with that the best we can, and we don't have an easy way of dealing with that. But we deal with it the best we can, so that we can continue to involve this social structure in moving toward our eternal ideal, right? Now, the absence of this spiritual component, this awareness of an eternal ideal that we're moving toward, that creates ill health holistically. Any part of the holistic character that is sick creates illness everywhere. If you don't believe that, try losing your job, right? Or having your business go bankrupt, right? Try that out and see if your whole health and everything else doesn't suffer. Right? I know a lot about health, right? I know as much about health as anybody I know. And yet when I was going to chiropractic school and couldn't make ends meet, there were all kinds of issues that happened, but it started with the housing collapse, right? And couldn't sell a house. Economy was down, had trouble starting out. I was in a situation that was very difficult. My health went down the toilet. My ability to even make healthy choices went down the toilet. It was dismal. And I have been working now for years to gain that back. And I wonder if some of it will ever come back. The amount of damage it did neurologically into my brain, into my metabolism, it's hard to know if I'm going to recover from that. I don't give up on it. I keep working on it, and I do keep making headway. And so if it doesn't, if the illness that I developed there doesn't kill me first, right, then presumably at some point I'll get back to some semblance of the health I had before. But that was basically 4 years of extreme intense stress. And you don't think that ruined and damaged the rest of my health? Yes, of course it did. And even my spiritual health, which is interesting because sometimes trials help us focus more on that eternal goal. It's a good thing. Kind of breaks up our attachment to worldly things, which you can find that concept in every culture that has a philosophy, right? Of breaking up your attachment to worldly things. But even that, there's still parts of my spiritual health that just weren't what they should be because I was in such a dismal state. So there's really no way to say that it didn't affect my holistic health, even though it was only one part of my life that was in dire straits there. I came home exhausted, fatigued. My brain was unable to handle new stressors, which that affect my family life. You see what I mean? So you can't just cut off one part of your holistic being and go, well, we're just going to ignore that, right? Because it doesn't work that way. It's still there. And if you don't take care of it, if you don't treat it well, then it begins to damage the health of everything else. And I would like to suggest to you that some of the disaster we find ourselves in, which is an illusion, well, the disaster is real, but what the disaster is really about is misdirection. But this disaster we find ourselves in, wow, this is like the outcome of a lot of people being spiritually unhealthy. And of course, that's been removed from our educational system, removed from society. We've been inundated with propaganda via the media and Hollywood and news reporting of every kind and books and every source, right, which have encouraged this movement. It's a really easy thing to do because it's like health, right? The problem with health is chocolate tastes so stinking good, right? It's so fun to eat out, right? It's a lot more fun to eat pizza on the couch watching a movie than to go get exercise and walk in the mountains, right? That's the problem with our health, right? There are appetites that represent entropy. And the same is true, right? If you take away that spiritual goal, you have these other appetites that now are unchecked, that represent entropy. And they start tearing us down as individuals and as a society and as a world. And I would like to submit that is the real origin of how we got here. And that the only way we're going to fix it is by getting people who can focus on those eternal goals and start moving toward them, and thereby have some perspective about what needs to be done to heal and correct our world. And it's not unreachable. It's not unattainable. We're just starting a long ways back. We've got a big disaster going on. So people sometimes, I just want to say one more thing. Sometimes people can get confused into thinking their spiritual life has something to do with God's intervention on their behalf. And while I personally have knowledge, I can testify that God does intervene on our behalf. I can also testify that many of the things we create, we need the consequences of those. And we're going to find that God doesn't just jump in and intervene every time we experience consequences of choices, whether ours or somebody else's or society's. That does not automatically happen. It might happen, but it doesn't automatically happen. In any event, our eternal goal, our spiritual health, which is aiming for that eternal icon, has nothing to do with God's intervention on our behalf, but rather has everything to do with us moving toward that goal. And the only intervention we need is the guidance we can get from God or from prophets, which will lead us that direction. And so we can look to wise individuals who can give us guidance that direction and benefit from that. And I would like to suggest that we all begin to use such sources as part of our leisure time. Now, I don't care who you use. I have an opinion, and some of those opinions are going to be expressed in later, I hope, videos. This doesn't appear to be recording my face, but it appears to be recording my sound. But they're going to come later. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to share that with you for whatever it's worth to you. Right? But whatever source you use, begin to integrate that as part of your standard of moving toward this eternal icon. Begin to ponder on that. And that is the help. That is the intervention that we need, because it's what we're doing here. We're experiencing a physical, holistic life. And our job is to move that whole thing toward that eternal icon. And so I'm going to finish on that thought, and hopefully this will be an excellent ponderable for you. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for taking some time. I hope you at least find some place in your life for this information. And I hope that if you find this goes against what you've always assumed, you'll make room for the possibility that it's right. I know you're going to find, if you do, there's a place where this is really a benefit, and that it makes your whole life better. How can you doubt? How can you think using the information I've just given you could have anything but benefit for you? Of course it does. And I invite you to go and take it. Thank you for listening.